King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to episode 169 of The Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for being here with me and listening as you do every week. You dedicated few listeners out there that do enjoy this program and find an appreciation to the media like I do. So glad to have you on the program tonight. We're going to go ahead and talk first about the streamers and the streaming media getting all the extra content they could ever want. First, there's the area about scripted TV, how the streamers and networks are looking to go ahead and stabilize and do some things to get a big boost to ratings and to engagement. You also have the issue where Netflix is working some deals to go ahead and make where they're going to go and start streaming Sony feature films in a multi-year deal. $1 billion deal as we're going on here. Netflix putting real money into what they're doing. So again, they're just banking for it all because they know they're in the lead. And now they don't have to be worrying about the amount of subscribers they have. They don't have to worry about when it comes to, worrying about the amount of money they're spending on content. Now, money's no object to them because they feel like they have they basically feel like they have a money tree right now, and they can go ahead and tap into it as much as they want because the change of the digital disruption has happened as we speak. It has happened. The pandemic couldn't have done better for Netflix and other streaming services right now. And then we're also going to talk about how Warner Media, who did a big change of putting all their movies on streaming simultaneously with the movie releases, well, they're having second thoughts now. So the CEO of Warner Media spoke candidly about that and made the point about, this is a one-year thing, and most of the other movie companies are going to probably go back to the way it was because the worst has ended, most part. The movie theaters are starting to open back up. My own movie theater right near my house will be open in 2 weeks, and then I'll start playing catch-up on movies I have not caught, based on the ones that are out there anyway that will still be out, and I can, they might be on demand, but again, I'm not going to pay to watch it at home. I want to go watch it in the theater, back with my popcorn, back with my candy, back with my drink, and get back to the way it was on Friday nights, which I'm looking forward to, very much so. With that said, we also are going to talk about radio, about the live and local aspect and where they've missed on that. And I want to talk about that also, especially when it comes to what I've listened to in radio lately and what my radio habits have really taught me more than anything else. Because actually, I've got myself back engaged in the radio, but it's not what you think. And then Fred Jacobs, who's a consultant in the radio business, pretty prominent, has put out quite a few things on his website, jacobsmedia.com. He's put out a couple of blog posts that I think are very important. I want to bring those up and bring them up to the attention of all of you out here. I think he's, putting out some good, knowledgeable, thoughtful, informative advice for the radio industry. He's actually being maybe not completely, forward-thinking, or not forward-thinking, being completely candid and being completely blunt, but he's, he's getting right to the edge of it as much as he can without, pissing anybody off, which I can understand why he's doing that. So anyway, let's get into it. Starting off with Netflix making a deal right now, grabbing the premium video on demand streaming rights to Sony's feature films and a multi-year deal. So here's what it is. The exclusive first pay window licensing deal in the U.S. will begin with the studio's film slate next year, including titles like Morbius and Uncharted. Now, Sony hasn't launched a direct-to-consumer streaming service to compete with Netflix. They're going to cement its future in a major deal with Netflix. So again, Sony's not creating their own platform to put all their movies on. No, they're going to go to Netflix. Interesting. So Sony has inked a multi-year exclusive first pay window licensing deal. So the deal is the movie's going to premiere on Netflix after they've been in theaters. Maybe not all of them. We'll see what they're all going to be doing right now. So here's what it is. So Netflix is going to get the right to Sony Pictures following their theatrical and home entertainment windows. The typical pay one window is 18 months. And since 2006, their pay TV partner has been Starz, on Lionsgate-owned Starz cable channel. So the 5-year pack will begin with Sony's 2022 slate, which include Morbius, Uncharted, Bullet Train, and the sequel to the Oscar-winning Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Also covering installments like major franchises like Jumanji and Bad Boys. The deal is roughly worth $1 billion to Sony Pictures. Wow. There we go. And again, Netflix, as I have said, spending billions of dollars to build out a library of its own. In its anticipation of the launch of other studio streaming services, they now have an access to a new library of films. They'll have the ability to license the rights to select titles from their library, including Columbia's nearly century-old catalog, other studio labels, TriStar, Sony Pictures Classics, and Screen Gems. They get a lot of movies they can go and tap into in their classic library, going back a century. That's huge. Plus the new movies. So there's a lot of new movies they're going to get, and you're going to get a lot of great titles as a result of all this. So over the deal, Netflix is also committed to financing a number of titles from the Motion Picture Group. So again, not only are they going to go ahead and become the exclusive, they're also going to start banking. They're going to bankroll some of the films. They're going to offer some financing to get their films done. And this will encompass the films that Sony intends to make directly for streaming from inception or decides at a later point to license for streaming. So some movies direct to Netflix. And they'll be Sony Pictures. They'll be quality movies, or quality done movies, for that matter. With the pack, Netflix will have a new pipeline of first-run film offerings, a steady supply of Marvel content, and it'll be the Marvel content you can't watch on Disney Plus, right? So again, future installments of Spider-Man and Venom, which will include Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Spider-Man No Way Home. The next installments in their respective franchises, both set for 2021 releases, and they will not be included in the pact. But that's just the one idea. But they'll be able to go and run them afterwards, right? So this is good. This is something important for them. Now, as we know, going into my next story, Warner Brothers shed shockwaves to the industry when it announced the entirety of the 2021 movie slate will be available both on HBO Max and open theaters, day and date. So simultaneous releases. They've already done it for Wonder Woman 1984. And so far, if I look at the numbers from the movie theaters so far and how they've done, it hasn't done that well for them. Obviously, they have not made the kind of money that could have made. But it is making some money right now on Godzilla vs. Kong, because quite a few movies are making their way back. So in its second full weekend, the movie has made $48 million in its first 5 days release, far beyond expectations, which were $20 to $30 million. And the film is going to probably break over 3,000 theaters coming up, now that there are more theaters that are opening up, because all the Regal theaters are all coming back up again. So we will look at the box office chart right now of the movies that are out. Godzilla vs. Kong right now, 48 million gross. And if we look at what they've done so far worldwide, add that together. Meanwhile, while I'm looking for that, you also have movies like Crude's A New Age, got up to 56 million domestically. Tom and Jerry has gotten to 39 million, domestically. Ryan and the Last Dragon from Disney, 32 million. This is domestic. We don't know the numbers of what they've done so far overseas, which is what I want to look at as well. Wonder Woman 1984 has gotten 46 million domestic. So here's the international. Godzilla vs. Kong, which obviously if you do it overseas, does make bank, $237 million for a grand total of $285,800,000. $285,800,000. And then Wonder Woman has reached $119 million international, worldwide overall, $165 million, which is not even close to where it should have been. Probably should have been $500 million. But again, that's when that was reached out there. But now we're seeing the movies are starting to make their comeback. This is a telling sign. And because of that, if we're looking at the weekend chart on the box office now, it's starting to make money. So like I said, Godzilla vs. Kong, $32 million in its first week. Huge. That's the kind of money that you're supposed to be seeing for a Godzilla vs. Kong movie, for a movie like that level. Now, I don't know how much the movie was actually made for, but again, with the legacy of the movie, and those two legendary icons of movies, right? You're thinking about the fact that, okay, we got this here. The budget was nearly $200 million. So it's making its money. It's going to be able to go and it's going to break, which is good for them. Well, actually, if I'm right, did I just see that right? That means it just broke it. Again, if it's over $200 million, then that means that they have made it over the top. Yeah, 285. So they broke it. They're going to be able to, the worldwide is going to be enough to get them over the top. And again, for a movie like that to get that kind of push, obviously people are getting vaccinated. People are wanting to go back to the theaters. People are going back to the theaters now. We're starting to see it now. I'm going to see some information from the theater owners and see where we start getting some information on that so we can see where they're going with it. And one of the movies I wanted to watch, Nobody, has made so far $11 million in 2 weeks. I get to see it in a couple of weeks. Finally, when my movie theater comes back up, so far $22 million total. And, Bob Odenkirk in a John Wick type role. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll keep that in mind. With Warner Brothers, Jason Kilar, who's the CEO of Warner Media, spoke with Fox.com. And he talked to them and says that he wants to unwind the streaming plan he made in place. So he wants to put the genie back in the bottle. Starting next year, he says the biggest movies for Warner Brothers will debut in theaters first and then go to the company's streaming service, HBO Max. Quote, I think it's fair to say that let's say a big DC movie, it's fair to say that would go exclusively to the theaters first and then go somewhere like an HBO Max after it's in theaters. That means that this year, if you want to watch The Suicide Squad, you'll be able to stream it at home on the day it debuts. But in 2022, when Warner Brothers releases The Batman, you'll have to go to theaters first. So back to the way it was before. Now, Regal Theaters has already announced that they have a deal now to show Warner movies on its screens for 45 days before they move to streaming. And that's going to be going for the same price for AMC and others. Now, until this week, Warner Media had yet to confirm it was going back to a pre-pandemic business plan, but the indicator is that while big media companies are eager to build up new streaming services, they need to keep the traditional movie business running for a while longer. So companies like Warner Media, Disney, Comcast, and Viacom CBS have all experimented with streaming first-run movies while theaters were closed. So again, they got to try it for the last year. Plus, they got to try it out and see what happens. Well, they all said they want their biggest movies back in theaters. So again, it didn't work. The audience is not ready, or they do not want to go ahead and watch new movies at home. Some might, but again, they want it as part of the package like Netflix is going to give them. They want to include it in their package. They don't want to pay a premium. If they're going to pay a premium, they want the movie experience. So you can give people to pay when they go to the movie theater, but you can't get them to pay if they can watch it from home. It makes sense. You go out, you pay. Does make sense like that. Plus, you make it a night, you make it a whole thing, go out to dinner, do some other stuff, That's what you do. Now, Disney has announced it was pushing back theatrical debut plans for Black Widow from May until July. And then when the movie does arrive in theaters, it will be available for a $30 rental via its Disney Plus streaming service. Again, that premium price is so much. $30 is crazy. Because they're hoping a whole family's going to watch it, and they're going to have multiple viewings of it for like 30 days or whatever it is. Now, Kilar said he was pleased with the results of the streaming and theater experiment so far, pointing to the relative box office success of Godzilla vs. Kong, which generated $50 million in ticket sales last weekend, even though it was streaming at the same time. And he told investors he thinks the strategy has generated more interest in HBO Max and kept existing subscribers from leaving the service. But he admits the company stumbled when it announced plans late last year, and it really hurt the movie making and movie distributing businesses. He says, quote, if I had the chance to do it over again, I think it's very fair to say that we would have taken a couple more days to see if we would have had even more conversations than we were able to have. So again, he thought about it, he considered it, and there we are. Now, just so you know, this guy is not just some run-of-the-mill. He did launch Hulu, who was Big Media's first attempt at streaming and was working at Warner Media last spring, just as the company was launching HBO Max, which was their way to catch up to Netflix, which, by the way, HBO Max is quite good. And they're doing some other things as well. So, again, it's a good way to go, and I'm glad that the movie theaters get a chance to survive. And I think also for Hollywood, they need that. Because if they felt like all the movies could just be watched at home and there was nothing special about going to the movie theaters, all those movie stars will be hurt. I think they would take a major blow altogether. So this, for them, was very important. So again, this is the things that are happening right now that you got to keep an eye on and what's happening. Now, let's go and move on into television. Because there was a story came out from Deadline earlier this week that caught my eye. The state of non-scripted TV networks and streamers are optimistic in 2021 about what they have going forward. Very optimistic about their future. So what are they talking about? So people feel like there's a sense of normalcy coming back. The likes of American Idol bringing back audiences, Survivor finally getting back to production, American Ninja Warrior returning to its traditional summer time slot. So we're starting to see that even the TV shows have to start going back to normal. Like, I mean, me watching, Let's Make a Deal or 25 Words or Less, which I don't know why I watch that. I mean, that show pops on because it's just like something's on the TV if I'm having dinner or something like that. Or watching Price is Right. And the weird version of watching these shows is just off. Just saying. When you watch like that, it's kind of tough to watch TV in the first place. I don't want to watch that. So, also, a widespread of optimism that the next 12 months will be buoyant for the business. So, Deadline has spoken to close to 50 senior buyers and sellers from across the broadcast, cable, and streaming spectrum. And they're looking at new formats coming through and why the unscripted business is still obsessed with spin-offs and reboots. Jenny Groom, EVP, unscripted at NBC Universal, said, quote, "At times, it has felt like Herculean efforts by all parties to keep this going. I'm ready for us to be turning a corner and hopefully being able to have more mobility and do more things." MTV Entertainment Group Nina LDS says, quote, I was fortunate enough to be at MTV during the golden age, the explosion of the genre, and I think we're all right for it all over again. There's an opportunity to redefine reality for a new generation. And that was also from the president of content and chief creative officer that developed the original Cribs and My Super Sweet 16. The buyers aren't taking their eye off the ball in case things take a little longer to get back to normal. Fox Entertainment's president of alternative entertainment and specials, Rob Wade, said, quote, "We're obviously in a really good phase and at the moment in LA in terms of caseload. But we've all seen from last year it's not a steady curve. The question is, where will we be in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? So you have to prepare in case there may be some stop downs, delays, or at the very least, more challenging times to film." So many of the broadcast shows that missed out last summer are returning. That includes Master Chef, Ultimate Tag, and then we also have a second season of a show that could be potentially filmed in Australia, as the network did with Name That Tune. And so the networks are getting new shows back. They're going to have now American Ninja Warrior, America's Got Talent, making it. They're going to have a new series called Family Game Fight with Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard, The Couple. ABC will have Bachelor in Paradise. And then they'll have the Celebrity Dating Game and The Ultimate Surfer. And then CBS will bring back Big Brother and Love Island in a much more traditional pattern. And again, Survivor is going to go back to the production after the first time in a year. Seasons 41, 42 will go back the way it were done in the past. The Amazing Race is also coming back. And in September, CBS ordered a new show called Come Dance With Me, executive produced by LL Cool J and Chris O'Donnell of NCIS Los Angeles fame. And the CW has also gone forward. They're going to be doing some things now. U.S. versions of British formats, Would I Lie to You? And another parlor game called Killer Camp. So there's much more about all this going on. Or I don't know what's going on. So they'll have that going on as well. So all the shows are coming back. On cable, The Go Big Show and Wipeout have already launched on TBS. They have a new cooking format called Rat in the Kitchen, a dating competition called The Big D, and The Cube, hosted and executive produced by NBA star Dwayne Wade, which will be on TBS instead of TNT. Then they also have a show called an illusionist stunt series called Big Trick Energy that'll be on TBS, Backyard Bar Wars. Oh boy. And then a new reality show, Roads to the Top, featuring All Elite Wrestling's Cody and Brandy Rhodes. We'll have that coming up as well. So they're all coming back with stuff. RuPaul's Drag Race is coming back. They'll have the All-Stars coming back. And there's much more. So again, everybody's coming back. More shows are coming back. It's going to take enough time. And then when it comes to streaming, Queer Eye and Nailed It is being made. And then you have some other shows called The Circle and Love is Blind. And the unscripted and undocumentary series Vice President Brandon Reed for Netflix said to Deadline that they have gained more confidence in the reality genre, and the longer lead time for programming helped it during the early days of the pandemic, and meant it had shows like Too Hot to Handle and Floor is Lava in the can before COVID struck. And Amazon's going to be their biggest competitor in the streaming space when it goes to unscripted. They're going to be renewing Tim Gunn and Heidi Klum's Making the Cut for a second season. But they did have a couple shows that they did try to push off, which were The Pack and Echo Challenge, got canceled after one season. HBO Max, they now have a competition format called Legendary, which features Grammy winner Megan Thee Stallion and Craftopia, both of which were renewed. Selena Plus Chef shows Selena Gomez learning to cook from home. And then you have a festive dating format, 12 Days of Dates of Christmas, that will be pushed out as well. And a flower competition format called Full Bloom that will also be returning. Again, they're all putting out stuff. Paramount Plus is going to have stuff now. Real World Homecoming, New York. They're going to be reuniting the cast of the 1992 show and an all-stars version of MTV The Challenge. Jesus, there's so much stuff. Yeah, there's so much in this story to talk about all the shows coming back. So what this means is everybody's coming back to normal in Hollywood. It took this long, but by the summer, we should start seeing shows like the way they were. By that point, everybody, I think, is going to start feeling like a little more normalcy, that Hollywood's going to start acting like normal because they can. They'll feel like everybody's vaccinated, people are going to feel better, and they're not going to feel so locked up. Social distancing, the masks, maybe all that will start getting taken away because we'll start seeing it on television. The normalcy of seeing that back after, up to about 18 months of seeing that. But now we don't know what could ever happen. We don't know what politicians could do. We don't know what other entities could happen. We don't know what the news is going to do. Because remember, what I need to see now more than anything else is because all these companies own news companies. They own news media. Are they going to make their news media tamp down the scare factor? Or are they going to quit letting them run like horror shows, talking about variants, and if they're going to be talking about, spikes in the coronavirus? They're going to have to find a new story to talk about. Okay? That's what they need to be doing. Just the point to be made here. Another thing that's got to be considered as well in the same area for streaming is the advertising part. Because again, even though you have some places that are trying to go ahead and put content out there and have people subscribe, there's still some content out there that is going to be for ad support. And the truth is that the advertisers need to find a way to get on the streaming media or find a way to reimagine. As is said by Adam Gerber, who's Global Chief Investment Officer of Essence. So here's what he says. The upfront sales season will include a stronger presence from streaming platforms that carry advertising and whose audiences have grown substantially in the past year. The ad-based video-on-demand services present challenges and opportunities for marketers that aim to reach consumers who are more adverse to traditional commercials. So Adam Gerber says, quote, "We're in a hyper-growth stage in terms of the transition that consumers are having to streaming." He notices, right? We're seeing acceptance of the ad-supported model, which is promising, but we're still in the infancy in terms of understanding how to best to leverage the opportunity from a marketing perspective as the TV marketplace changes so quickly. So there's a shift in consumer expectations. He predicts that most scripted content will be on demand through streaming platforms, while live linear TV will continue to differentiate itself with sports and news. The popularity of streaming platforms that don't carry advertising, such as Netflix and Disney Plus, is worrisome for marketers that seek to reach those audiences, he said. He says, quote, "There's no question that the streaming services are cannibalizing the ad-supported environment. That's a problem for marketers, but it's not unexpected. As an industry, we've not kept up with consumers in terms of the advertising experience they expect." No. The last time they did, they probably were still doing jingles and making the commercials entertaining and exciting and kind of blending in, so they weren't just like sitting out there just being blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what happens. So he also says there's a tremendous number of ways we could reimagine and re-explore innovation on the ad format front in an AVOD environment. And We've maintained a pod and multi-ad position model and assume that's how we need to move forward. He says the upfront season will mark a significant change in ad inventories. The supply has existed historically will not continue to exist the same ways and the same environments that it has. There's a very swift shift to streaming. We have to rethink our models. We have to ask our sell-side partners to shift their business models to enable buy-side decisioning to become a reality at scale. So these are the things that have to be considered. Advertising needs to find room because people want to still be able to advertise. Not so much that advertising needs to be a part of every content, but the advertisers need a place to promote their content or their service, their product. Where are they going to go for that? Like, what would Progressive and Geico and McDonald's and Home Depot do if they couldn't advertise anywhere? And they could go to social media, sure, but again, to not have the opportunity to get people when they have their eyeballs on a TV screen watching something on streaming or watching something on linear TV. These are the things that have to be considered. It's an interesting concept. It's a very interesting point to make here. And that, again, these are what the companies are thinking about. So at least the corporates are now, they didn't go ahead and they got scared and they made some rash decisions during the coronavirus. They did. Not so much about television having to go ahead and just try to readjust. I get that part. But again, they really didn't need to go showing us COVID-related or COVID, feeling kind of content as if they needed to see that. Because it's going to look bad. Like, when any of that content is going to be repurposed, you can't even show that content really because people are going to see masks. And you know what? They don't want to think about that anymore. At some point, people are going to see that and they're going to say, oh, yeah, that was during coronavirus. And they're going to kind of just laugh it off. They might not even like it so much because they're going to say, well, that doesn't look normal. Like we're back to normal. Why do we need to look at that again? So that was a mistake that was being done by these big corporate giant media companies. And of course, being behind on the media when it comes to streaming, well, of course. And the advertisers being behind when it comes to streaming, of course. These are the problems that they have. Unless this big mainstream corporate media, they need to get things back to normal. That's why they're doing it. It's not because it's a choice. They have to get business back on board. They took such a hit, all of them. I mean, if you probably imagine, the fact that now Disney Universal, they're trying to get their theme parks back up. They need to get back to full capacity to make their money back. And what are they going to have to do that? I mean, think about that. It's just to try to get all these things back in order, all these big corporations to get what they were able to make money off of before and get that money coming back in. It's not going to just come back in a big windfall. I mean, the fact that Godzilla vs. Kong for Warner Brothers is making bank because it's a movie that would be popular still, even if it was back then. But I think more than ever, a big blockbuster movie that people can go to in the movie theaters, they can go back to go watch at. I think it's a bit of an anomaly that I think some people just wanted to get back to the movie theaters, get back out of the house. So the fact that they can go to the movie theaters and go back to what they were doing before, enjoying the movies, they get to now relish and they get to enjoy something they took for granted. Because there were a lot of things we took for granted when we were in this coronavirus and this pandemic. That's what happened. And I think, I see that right now when I, Uber drive for people around here in Florida. For all the people that have visited Florida in the last couple of months, that normally we still got our amount of tourism that we normally get, but it wasn't the international tourists. It was American tourists. People that decided, hey, you know what? Florida is very tropical. Great restaurants, great food, great nightlife, all the stuff that we could get in the Caribbean climate. We could do it here. We can go to Florida. And they did. And a lot of people showed up. And of course, some people decided to move back down here or move to here permanently. Well, a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of Northeasterners, they're looking. Right now, there's not even houses for them to buy. That's where they are right now. It's pretty funny. It's a amazing time right now. Buyer's market. So if you wanted to sell it right now, you wouldn't make much for it because not as much. There's probably some demand for it, but not even close to where it was. I can't even understand it myself, but what can I say? Let's move into radio. Again, Jacobs Media, Fred Jacobs, consultant extraordinaire. He put out quite a few stories that caught my attention. Again, radio has a lot to work on. And Jacobs Media Strategies, that's what this is. Let's talk about what he learns about in the story here. Now, for Fred Jacobs, just so you know, he was quickly known for the creation of the classic rock radio format. He's been a long-time consultant. Done a lot of work, commercial public radio clients across the board. And here's what he says. So we're going to take a couple of stories that he did. He did a couple of stories back to back. One is radio losing the battle for the ear? ? And he talks about now that when did radio start losing its spot, which is the way I say it. And he says it started with podcasting around 2004. That's about right. The medium walled for many years before it became the darling it is today. It wasn't until serial captured the media in 2014 that masses of people started buzzing about and actually started listening to podcasts. He's probably right about that. The advent of voice might be another key in radio's ascent. Siri was introduced to the iPhone 4S in 2011. Most people still work their fingers in the apps of their smartphones. Voice came into its own in 2014 with the Amazon Echo featuring Alexa hit the market. And then audio became more omnipresent at the Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, in 2017. Alexa, Google Assistant started making their appearance in a wide variety of gadgets, from TVs to refrigerators to workout equipment. And then iHeartMedia in 2018 purchased the How Stuff Works podcasting platform, and the CEO, Bob Pittman, was interviewed by NBC News' Claire Atkinson. He extolled the virtues of radio, but addressed the broader radio audio platform, including smart speakers, the StuffWorks acquisition, as well as streaming audio. His money quote, audio is hot for the first time in decades. And then radio companies started modifying their brand names. The words media and audio started to show up. So we're seeing some of that change. The ABC Radio is now ABC Audio. And Entercom, which was originally CBS, or which was originally Xfinity, or something, Infinity Broadcasting before, now it's called Odyssey. So it's dropping its radio.com streaming platform in form of the new corporate moniker. A statement move. And now we have Clubhouse. It's generated a steady hum around social spoken word, or for short, social audio. Right now, while I'm doing this podcast tonight, I have people right now that are looking to try to record and utilize the Clubhouse chats for radio, for podcasting. We're getting to that point. Interesting. And then there's more. Spotify acquiring Locker Room, which modestly referring to the future of audio, and other variants springing up, including Mark Cuban's new creation, Fireside Chat. Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn are scrambling to respond with social audio platforms of their own, several by invitation only, giving the trend a feel of a social nightclub with a virtual bouncer in front of the entryway. Not everyone is admitted, and not every topic is worthy. And broadcast radio execs not surprisingly having conversations about how they might best utilize these social audio tools. And their overriding assumption, as always, is that when it comes to audio, no one knows the ropes better than the radio pros. So if that were true, broadcasters would be partying in the audio penthouse right now, celebrating the spoils of these new platforms like podcasting, but on-demand radio has not come easily to most radio companies. Take my word for it. Our Broadcasters Meet Podcaster series at Podcast Movement has been well attended, but radio has not produced the landmark podcast milestones everyone hoped for. Instead, iHeart and Odyssey have bought their way into the podcasting market to be forced to be stepped aside or cede the space to more innovative content creators. NPR is the only broadcast radio entity has elected to build it rather than buy it, and they've been a success. Now, even the public radio overlords find themselves mired in an increasingly competitive landscape, increasingly becoming difficult to dominate because there have been so many big money players trying to own the hill while the marketplace is glutted with more and more content. As we talked about, 800% in podcasts in the last year. Now, I've been here doing all my stuff. I did add a new podcast series, but again, it's still different than everybody else. And for me, I enjoy what I do, and I keep podcasting. Goodness gracious, man! It's part of my life. But that's just me doing radio. When it comes down to it, people are doing podcasts in a certain way. This is me ranting. This is me in front of a nice microphone in my comfy chair, ranting away, talking like with anybody else, or doing a radio show on a live transmitter. We'll be doing the same thing. But again, no commercials to go and worry about. And, nobody telling me what I can or cannot say. But again, I control that format because I do programming of my own. So I know what I want to talk about, what I will talk about, what I think will people listen to of the audience I want to have. So it keeps that in mind. And for NPR, listen, if they just did podcasting, I think they would do fine instead of letting the live radio stations do what they're going to do. And again, they don't even use the podcasts as part of their shows. Like sometimes some of their shows become podcasts, but the other way around, some of the podcasts they do to move it around the other way doesn't always go that way, which is, that's the other thing too, is that their format fits well for podcasting. Let's just say it like that. And it is a style that everybody does, that it's quite a few people have enjoyed that style of podcast. So many people do that style of podcast. I can appreciate it, but I don't do it myself. I want an old school, I want traditional radio feel with a podcast touch to it. It's still something about that I want to be able to do. You should have a good voice behind the microphone. You should know what you're saying. You should not be stumbling over. I'm not using much, except for a couple of links I'm using for stories. I'm off the fly right now. I'm directly reading some stories, but again, right now, off the cuff. This is just me. Whatever's coming out of my mouth. And for the most part, when I record these shows, it's in real time, with the occasional stopping because I got to go and take a drink or something else, some kind of disruption. But other than that, I'm recording it in one full flow, all in one shot. That's the way I podcast. That's the way I do it. It's the way I feel comfortable with. And it took me a while. Again, I've been only doing podcasting on my own, seriously, since 2012. 8.5 years at this point. It took me a while to get to this point to get good at this. And now I can get behind this microphone as seasoned as any other radio pro. And I can get up here and I can talk. And also what else happens too is that, everybody's got better equipment now. This microphone I bought, the Shure MV7, it sounds so damn good. When I get right in front of it, just sounds so good. And for that, it makes me even more pumped up to do the show. Because when I plug this headphone jack into the microphone itself, I get to hear myself back. The callback to it, the sound back on it is so good. And it feels so, it's comforting. I can enjoy the sound of my voice, which sometimes I couldn't do as well. But now I can, more so than ever. It does help with the right equipment, folks, especially when doing podcasting. If you get the right one, you can really enjoy yourself. Now, back to Fred Jacobs. When it comes to podcasting, smart speakers, and even social audio, radio broadcasters have pitifully few homegrown successes to crow about. And yet the basis of this platform and devices or attributes radio are used to routinely provide. Most podcasts at their core are telling stories, great interviews, and intriguing dramas. Again, he makes the point. Lose the battle for the ear, because even in podcasting, radio can't get it done right. Isn't that amazing? And for a little while, I remember when I did try to do podcasting early on, and some people would put their morning shows up there or other content from other FM stations, and I would give that a shot. It wasn't good. Rehashing what they did, include the traffic reports and the news checks? No. I don't want dated content. And even if they put little clips of their show, it didn't do enough for me either. It's very interesting like that. But again, there's a whole lot of podcasts out there. And to kind of keep yourself out there and noticeable, it's tough. Plus, remember, the radio folks need to continue to be doing their live content while they're doing this. So how much effort they're going to put into a podcast when they're putting out 3-4 hours of content a day in front of a live audience? It's asking a lot of them. Like right now, I don't do anything live on radio. I do this. But I can imagine it'd be tough to go and put that together and do a podcast. That some of these shows have to do. They have to do a podcast after the fact. And there was an NBC News story by Dylan Byers that they spoke to Spotify CEO Daniel Ek and his purchase of Locker Room last year. So Spotify has its Clubhouse now. So in the story, they point out that Locker Room provides the company an opportunity to evolve into a, quote, enhanced live audio experience for a wider range of creators and fans, end quote. So, of course, they have a stable of proprietary podcasters, Joe Rogan, Bill Simmons, Michelle Obama, Princess Harry and Duchess Meghan in the live space. And the Locker Room app will give these celebrity podcasters the ability to now broadcast in real time rather than delay, while musicians might one day be able to broadcast their concerts or record live to listeners. So now the live audio experience has been presented with no subscription fees on the AM and FM dial for a century now. So does radio have a branding problem, or does it have a content problem? Does the word radio symbolize an antiquated entertainment form, or is the problem the predictable, tired, and generic product that constitutes good enough and the best we can do in order to achieve a higher degree of economy and efficiency? And now deregulation will be touted as a necessary support mechanism to keep radio and broadcasters competitive. But will the ability to own more stations in markets big and small be the magic elixir that broadcasters are longing for? Will it be radio salvation or just another tourniquet for an industry that is falling further behind in the audio race? Yes, continued decline, Fred Jacobs. You are correct. The answer is not about owning most or all stations in the market, but instead providing a valuable, desirable experience no one else can offer. Rather than trying to jump into the hot audio category of the year, shouldn't radio broadcasters be looking within themselves to produce a better live and local version of what constitutes radio in 2021? Which goes into his next story he does, is radio losing the battle of the ear to podcast, stream, smart speaker, satellite radio, and now Clubhouse. And people wrote back to him and said that radio has walked away from its homegrown roots. When you look at a rating book in most dire PBM markets, chances are the stations sitting at the top of the heap are still filling that live and local position that has served radio so well for so long. But conventional wisdom radio has taken a decidedly different course in recent years. The hubbing of talent, music, and production has become popular and common, thanks in no smart to its economy and scale, ease of execution, and promise to ensure stations sound consistent whether in Abilene or Ann Arbor. The degree of difficulty of a plug-and-play format or voice track personalities is tantalizing for many broadcasters. But then 2020 happened, the pandemic, and the reckoning has been real. A global pandemic has forced us to reassess and recalibrate everything. Now, the question is, if Hollywood's starting to get back to normal, the television's trying to get back to normal, why doesn't radio? Again, how many people are crammed into a radio studio? Now, you might not need to have the entire building of salespeople in there or all the programming staff inside all the time. You could kind of, do some kind of a shift around. But again, you're not using those studios. I mean, come on now. He goes through a lot of information about why live and local works. It goes across different age ranges. It goes across genders. It goes across political factions or political beliefs. He says now we're seeing positive signs in markets all over the country. We know that local venues, theaters, bars, clubs, arenas, and restaurants will be back open for business very soon if they're not already. How they perform, how they're welcomed back, how locals learn the fact of all part of the narratives expect from local radio. Stations that provide local flavor in the form of features, apps, website info, talk show guests, and other outlets is the content that will separate hometown radio stations from SiriusXM or the Joe Rogan Experience or endless conversations about how to make 5 figures every month on Clubhouse and other media distractions that add to the noise. And that is the idea that he's coming from. Quite interesting. And this is the kind of thing that you got to think about that we're at. And he's absolutely right in all those respects. So I want to keep an eye on this and see if we can get somewhere where radio can get back to where it needs to be. But again, I want to get back to a point that I talked about when it comes to live and local. This is important. So I don't know if I've talked about this on the show yet, but I have seen from I think it was Lance Fent over at RadioInsight.com. He put a story out talking about Radio.Garden or Radio Garden, the app, which kind of like how TuneIn works, where there's thousands upon thousands of radio stations around the world to listen to. But the gimmick on Radio Garden is you get to see all these dots, or they call them seeds, of different cities all over the world. You see the globe in real time, and you're able to go ahead and point the cursor on your phone, on your app, to whichever dot in the world you want. And you will find 1 to maybe hundreds of stations in a particular market where you can listen to the radio. So you could take I feel like you could take years checking out every station, trying to listen to what you might like on there. To be able to favorite everything, it's got to be tough. But for me, I wanted to find it a little bit easier. Optimally, I like to be able to go listen to the hits, hear the new music that's out there. I want to be able to hear dance. I want to be able to hear reggaeton. I want to hear Spanish music of all types. I want to be able to hear, whatever. Not so much rock, because I don't want to hear old music. I want to hear new music. So I'm going to hear what new music I can find. Maybe it's a new hip hop, right? So where I'm at right now is I found so many radio stations that I really wouldn't have been paying attention to if not using for Radio Garden. Because Radio Garden, I can now check out stations and I can start paying attention to what other major cities have on their radios there. So I can find the hit music stations of a particular market. But the hit music stations in, say, Europe or in the Caribbean or South America, which is where I've been looking at so far, are so different and so diverse and so unique and so fascinating. They do great radio imaging. They have good voices on the air. They're exciting. They're entertaining. They do morning shows. They do afternoon shows. They engage with their audience. You hear them talking about various different things what they promote. You can't really tell because of the language barrier, but you could hear some of it. And some of the Spanish part, I could definitely understand because I could speak Spanish and I can write and I can be more or less fluent. So I listen to certain stations over there that are, again, they don't put that many commercials out there. That's for one. Some of them don't put any. I don't even know how they do 24 hours, but they're on FM or AM FM frequencies, and I barely hear commercials. It's amazing. And you hear DJ sometimes talking in between, and you see some of the content that's being done. It's fascinating. So I got a handful of stations to listen to now on a regular basis. Listen to a Radio Garden. As I pull up the app right now of the stations I listen to at the moment, I'll give you a little idea of what my playlist looks like, or my favorite list on Radio Garden is, which is really amazing. So right now, as I pull it up, as you open up, you'll see a little globe, the little logo for Radio Garden, and it will say planting seeds, and it will open up and it will show you all the different dots on the map. So right now, of the hit music stations, so like if I want to hear a Z100 or Kiss FM over in America, well, these are the equivalents in other countries. But what they do is they're playing music when it's getting streamed, it's getting played in real time. Okay, if a song's brand new and it's popular and it's viral, they're playing the songs viral. They're also doing a really good job at once in a while throwing on a gold hit that we haven't heard in a while. They'll do that very much so. And they also take artists that would not get played on American radio, because sometimes in your international markets they do better. For instance, Pink, she's got a new song with her daughter. What is it, Willow Sage Hart? New song, and it's got very popular. Jason Derulo has his songs getting played more over there in Europe. Ava Max, very much so. Dua Lipa, very much so. And then all these dance acts, which, I don't understand why American radio won't play some of the dance acts that are coming in from other countries and put it on the air over here. As if there's something wrong with EDM over here, or just dance pop. Because dance pop is so popular in Europe. I mean, the UK, the stations I have, here we go. One I have is Power FM 100.2. It's in Greece, so outside of Athens. Delta FM, which is in Dunkirk, France. In Marbella, Spain, it's La Mega Marbella 90.0. Kiss FM 98.8 in Berlin, Germany. Slam 40, which is in Naarden and the Netherlands. Another Netherlands station is Q Music Top 40, which I'm guessing those are just streaming only. I don't know if they're actually on FM dials, but I'm not sure. Then there's NRJ, which is a format of different stations. The other thing, too, is that there's a lot of streaming radio that is just commercial free, and I don't even know how they make money off of it, but they have the music. Welcome. Here's the other thing. Unlike Spotify or Apple, the music has a certain sound to it, but these radio stations, their music is compressed. It has that radio sound that I like. When you listen to them, it really makes, your speaker stump. It makes your headphones stump. It sounds great, right? You got that going for you. And then we move along and say, okay, I want to hear from other markets. I want to hear different music altogether. So let me go to reggaeton or some music that I actually like now, which is a Dominican style of dembow music. So it's their version of reggae infused with reggaeton, but it's a very much faster tribal like of sound. El Alfa, Bullying 47, or there's other artists that are out there. Chimbala, and the other artists that are in the Dominican area that, I think reggaeton eventually is going to have to catch up and let these artists become part of the lexicon, of the playlist that is reggaeton, not just trap music, because it is very good. And the urban reggaeton Spanish urban stations in the Dominican Republic, this particular music gets played prominently of all these local artists, right? Same thing goes for these European stations. They're playing all the pop hits that are over in America, but they're also playing pop hits that are playing big in Europe, and they're playing local artists, or they're playing artists of their nation. So Greece, they might have a Greek artist. Of course, UK has the UK artists, and the same thing goes for the other countries. Spanish artists, all that kind of stuff. So there are stations in the Dominican Republic, because I enjoyed my time going to the Dominican Republic, and once travel gets back to normal, I definitely want to go back. Then I have Mega FM, which is in the south end of the island. Turbo 98, which is one of my favorite stations. They are the urban station. It's a party station over there. Everything is very much, they have a lot of upbeat music when it comes to the Dominican style reggaeton that's out there. Then the reggaeton that's a popular urban stuff, but it's a very popular on the charts, very popular, period. They're playing the hits over there. And they're playing the local stuff that everybody enjoys us too. It's just a real young people station. Full of energy, full of life, amazing energy, with a guy with the vocals as the main imaging voice of the station. He's popular in Dominican Republic for the mega station in Barahona, and the station in Santiago in Dominican Republic, Santiago de los Caballeros, by the way, that's the proper name of the city. This guy does, where he names the station, I can't even do the deep voice that he does, but it's Turbo 98. I can't even do the voice, it's so strong. But again, the production is point. It's bussin'. That's a new phrase, right? Production is bussin'. The sound is great. The choice of music, the programming of the station is great. It's so good. I mean, the fact that I can listen to commercials over there, and I will listen to commercial breaks over these stations, because, they do such a good job of programming on radio over there. Yeah, they've earned the right to play commercials for me because they do such a good job. They got DJs that are exciting. They have programming. They have their music playlist is so good. Like, I'll sit around and listen to music after that. I'll sit around and wait 5 minutes for a commercial break to finish up, to go ahead and catch back up. Turbo 98 FM, they play the same commercial breaks over and over. Like, you might hear some commercials, but again, even the commercials are exciting and fun. Like, when I go to Dominican Republic and I hear the stations there, they got jingles. They got the music set, either the salsa music or merengue music or the Dominican dembo or whatever it might be. But their commercials, for the most part, they're not very conventional. They're very exciting. They got lottery commercials. They got all this stuff that's just flashy and fun and exciting, and it just, it's engaging. And even the commercials for like the phone company, Claro, which is like it's like a T-Mobile or a Sprint in other countries. And it's just so popular, and it does so well. And it's just grand. Really love it, enjoy it. Then I have a couple of the urban stations that might not be so prominent, but I keep them because I like to change the spot of the dial, right? So I have a couple of stations that are on these channels that are also playing English and Spanish, or English and other music from other countries. And the funny part is, the European stations, they're not even in Spain. Okay, some of these stations in Greece, or in Berlin, or in Germany, or in the Netherlands, they're playing the Spanish music. If there's some songs that are popular in Spanish and they just get to be in the charts, they're playing them. So if I want to hear Ozuna, or Bad Bunny, or Anuel AA, they're playing their songs, which is fascinating. The song Bandito is one of the biggest songs in reggaeton right now. It gets played on these stations. Dakiti from Bad Bunny, it gets played on these stations. Not a whole lot, but they are playing it. It doesn't matter. And when you talk about songs not getting overplayed and overkilled, they're not doing that. They don't play the songs 115 times a week. They're not playing songs every 90 minutes. They're playing them maybe every 2 or 3 hours, which was the way it was back in the day. And they talk to their audience, and they engage with their audience, and they have their morning shows that are funny. Like, I might not understand what they're doing, but you could just tell they're having a good time. You could tell they're actually programming. They're having fun. They're doing their stuff. And then I'll take some stations that are American that do a pretty good job with the format. Like SBS does a pretty good job on their formatted stations. Lima, Peru. I have a station in Argentina I listen to. I have a couple of Mexican stations. One in Monterrey, one to Mexico City. And then I have a couple of Puerto Rican stations that play salsa music, or I want to hear bachata, which is a very guitar-friendly kind of formatted sound in Spanish. That's very romantic sounding, but it's also very cool and fun. Good dance music, too. All that's there. And when I look at what Global's doing to bring their stations over here, one of the stations I listened to over there that I did try out was Kiss FM in the UK, which is a very urban, dance, hip-hop friendly format. Thought it was kind of interesting. It really wasn't for me, but I can understand. Like, they did a good job programming it, much like Capital, which is their top 40 format. And again, Global is the same company that's trying to buy a bigger stake in iHeartRadio. We haven't heard anything lately as to what happened to that so far about Global trying to buy a bigger stake, which I hope they do, but I don't know if they're going to. I hope they do. We're keeping an eye on it. I really hope something will happen. But again, these are the kind of things that are coming up. And I can't wait to see what happens if something comes up and we can kind of see a big change. So we'll keep that in mind there. And I'm going to leave it right there. So I appreciate all of you listening to the program, as you always do each and every week. So many different things happening here. So again, the normalcy from the coronavirus is finally here. We're finally now turning the corner. I've been vaccinated. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. I know other people that are getting vaccinated. It's obviously getting out there. More people are getting themselves the shot. And I'm guessing the cases are starting to go down. I don't pay attention to news or politics to know what's going on. But I know people are getting vaccinated, and that's what people cared about. They got the shot? Okay. Then they continue to make sure that they're being maintained, taken care of, and that when the numbers start going down, people can then take the masks off. We can then distance as we want to, like we used to. Go back to concerts, go back to festivals, go back to movies, and go back to things not exactly all the way they were. So I'm sure some people are not going to go back all the way to where they were before. And there'll be still some measures as people try to come back, and, we'll get things coming back. I'm sure social distancing will still be a thing going forward, but we'll find our way back, I think. I'm giving myself hope. I hope all of you do too. All right, we're going to leave it there. Come back next week for another Broadcasters Podcast. And remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.